All right, and we're live. We're live. We're live. Welcome to the Beach Brothers Show. Beach Brothers, we all live in Virginia Beach, Virginia. I'm Seko Varner. That's Conrad Schesventer. And at the very end is my good brother, Jose Cruz. So we all live in the beach. We love Virginia business and politics. And tonight we have a special pre-election show. So before we get started, we want to have a little chat about some of the things that are happening in the political world. So, Conrad, I know there's some big things happening in your neck of the woods, right?
You can say that. First of all, I'm getting a little bit of feedback, some of the noise in the background.
Okay.
All right. But I guess in my neck of the woods, it seems like it's settled down a bit. We all know the four people who are in the Rose Hall for City Council race. Cheryl Turpin was the last person to get in, former delegate at the General Assembly. Gary Hubbard, local contract engineer. The incumbent, and myself. So there's the Kimsville race, the Centerville race, the at-large race, and the mayor race, all that going on. And the past couple of weeks, it's sort of settled off.
Go ahead, Conrad.
All right. Okay, well, I guess I'll circle it back around to Rose Hall's race, my race. I'm contending in that seat for Virginia Beach City Council, and I'm running with the same goals that I've had all the other times that I've run for City Council, which is specifically to lobby Richmond and DC to secure flooding mitigation funding. And we had a pretty good storm roll through today, so we've seen what flooding takes its toll here in Virginia Beach. And this is a big need with the city pulling back on flooding projects with the revamped COVID-influenced budget. And I also want to work to revamp our bus transit system and secure funding for that as well. And the city could afford to loosen up some regulations regarding Airbnb, food truck, e-scooters, backyard animals. Development should also be more cautious and not so protected by the city compared to basic services. And again, I will allude to the Dome site, where its funding was more preserved relative to the needing of our flooding fixes, where they did take some from in the recently approved budget. So I want to sit down at that table and use these wishes to model Virginia policy, and that improves us all, in my opinion. I would also like all viewers to like the Conrad Schesventer for Virginia Beach Facebook page. That's where you get to see me, hear me, watch and read everything regarding my topics of the day. Keep up with activism, and then drop by raisethemoney.com/C Schesventer and give to those same ideas too.
All right, good stuff. Good stuff. Conrad for City Council. Now, this is a pre-election extravaganza. So for those of you who are, looking around and trying to decide what you're going to vote for tomorrow, I said this last week. I've been saying it a while. Actually, we've gotten a lot of pushback for it. So tomorrow in the 757 is the Republican primary. But as you can see on the screen, we also have some congressional district Democrats who are having a primary as well. But in the Hampton Roads area, it's the Republican primary. Now, this is important for all voters. This is important for all voters in my position. All right, so this is what I see it. If you, let's say in the 2nd Congressional District, we have Scott Taylor, Ben Loyola, and Jerome Bell. I want to shout out Ben and Jerome, who've been on the Beach Brothers show. So they're going to be going against, whoever wins that primary will be going against, I believe, Elaine Loria. Is that correct, Conrad?
Elaine had no primary opponent, so she is just riding right on into the election cycle as the only Democrat. So yes, Elaine Loria is who they will take off against.
All right, so tomorrow, if you're a Democrat, you'll have the chance to vote for the opponent for Elaine Loria. Because the primary, the Republican primary in the 757 is open. Everybody can vote. Democrat, Republican, Independent, because in Virginia you don't necessarily register with the party affiliation. So in terms of being a voter. So all voters in Virginia can vote in the primary. In the Hampton Roads area, all voters can vote. So if you love Elaine Lauria, then you might want to say, I want to select the person that's going to run against her because I want her to win. If you're a Republican, you might say, I want to select the person who can beat Elaine Lauria. If you're an independent, you can say, I want to make sure I have the best options. So take a really good look at these candidates. I would encourage everybody to vote. And when I've said this, people are like, what? But I'm a Democrat. I can't vote. Yes, you can. Why would a Democrat vote? I just gave you the reason. I'm an independent. I just gave you the reason. So the Republicans have their reasons. So I say we're voting for leverage. We're voting for leverage. We're voting for leverage. So whoever you are, wherever you show up on the spectrum, I suggest that you go out and vote tomorrow. It's very important. And look, this is for the whole state of Virginia. If you look on the screen, that's for the entirety of Virginia. So we want to make sure that all these seats have a lot of representation from voters tomorrow. Take a hard look. Hey, Daniel Gade, Alyssa Baldwin, Thomas Special, they were on our show. Vangie Williams, she was on our show. Ben Loyola and Jerome Bell, they were on our show. Madison Downs was on our show. Cazel Levine, she was on our show. So if you keep watching the Beach Brothers show, you're definitely going to be in the know as well. So, hey, from the Beach Brothers, we just want to encourage everybody to go out and vote tomorrow. Raise your ballot. Raise your ballot. And I'm off of my soapbox. I'm off of my empowerment soapbox. Brother Jose, what's good, man? What's good?
Nothing much, Brother Seko. Well, want to go ahead and give our first shout out is going to be to Rick's Cafe. To everybody in Virginia Beach, everybody knows exactly where Rick's is at. Rick's is finally back open. Rick's is an awesome place to go get breakfast food, sandwiches, just get just about anything. Anything you can order in Rick's is amazing. You will never have a bad meal there. And Rick's is finally open to the public and go ahead and serving to the public. So go ahead and stop in. At Rick's Cafe is located at 1612 Virginia Beach Boulevard, Virginia Beach. Stop in and see people at Rick's Cafe and let them know Jose and the Beach Brothers sent you.
All right. Good stuff. So, good brother, Conrad Schesventer for Virginia Beach City Council. What's good for today? What's good for today?
There you go, get it.
Well, tonight, Monday, June 22nd, means that the Virginia main primary is tomorrow, following up what you said so good there, Mr. Seko. Congress seats are up, Senate seats are up, and in exchange for our usual Tuesday night show, we're going to have an election night eve special with three of our excellent previous guests. All of the guests have Democratic primary races tomorrow. They're all with strong progressive voices. They're all women of color who will, with victories tomorrow, be a possible team of dynamism that will show the House of Representatives what the new Virginia looks like. They're Cazel Levine, running in Virginia's 4th District for the Democrat ticket. Zainab Moshini, running for Virginia's 11th District on the Democrat ticket. And Vangie Williams, running for Virginia's 1st District on the Democrat ticket. I want to thank all of you wonderful ladies for coming back on to the Beach Brothers show. Especially all together. And tonight, I want to have fun and treat this like a political extravaganza. And let's begin with the stars. You three great candidates. Who are you?
I can go first. Thank you for having me back. As you said, my name is Zainab Moshini. I'm running on a progressive platform of Medicare for All, the Green New Deal bills, racial justice, and abolishing ICE. Our campaign is building a coalition of a diverse and multiracial working class. We've gotten a lot of interest, particularly from young people, from people of color, from immigrants and progressives in the district. And we've had dozens of volunteer signups daily in the past couple of weeks, many of whom are working class, and it's their first time working on a political campaign or their first time voting. So I'm incredibly excited about tomorrow, and I'm hoping for a big turnout.
Right. So I'll go next if you guys want me to. So I'm Cazel Levine. Sorry about the hat. It's raining here, so I'm campaigning all the way till the last moment in the rain. And so I just dashed in. And I have to first admit that our service is intermittent because we have a storm going on. But I'm Cazel Levine. I'm running for the 4th Congressional District here in Virginia. Similar progressive platform, universal health care. We have 93,000 Virginians without health insurance and 28 million across the United States without health insurance. And just claiming affordable health care as an option is not a real option when you don't have the funds to pay for health care. And we're the only developed nation on the planet that does not provide health care to their citizens. And we can do better as the wealthiest nation. Secondly, education and making sure that our education systems are modernized, not just when we talk about infrastructure. I like to go beyond just roads, bridges, and streets to include our school infrastructure, not only just the physical infrastructure, but making sure that our students are able to really excel, and not through just standardized testing, but looking at other options to make sure that our children are recognized and rewarded for their creativity. And I'm for 2 years of free tuition for college students, as well as subsidizing small businesses. The economy has wreaked havoc on our small businesses, and I would like to shift corporate America's subsidies to our small business so they could build, sustain, and pay a living wage. And thank you for having me back on the show. I'm so excited, and I'm more excited to be here with my 2 other sisters running in the Virginia's race this year. Let's hope it's the historic year for women here in Virginia.
Yes. Well, I'm Vangie Williams. I'm running in the 1st District of Virginia. This is my 2nd time running. I almost won back in 2018. Came just a little short of about 33,000 votes. We had the highest number of votes in, I would say, probably about 30 years. During a midterm election, we fell short by 33,000, which meant it was a 10% spread. We did it, and we did it strong. One of the things that I'm continuing to run on is an economy that works for everyone. My Invest in America initiative is going to bring back agriculture and aquacultural jobs to the 1st District, focusing our attention on who we feed, how we feed, and why we feed right here in our own community. Making sure we bring manufacturing jobs, making sure that we bring manufacturing to the 1st District so we can service the Newport News shipbuilding yard, so that we can service green energy, so we can build things here, bring jobs here, and make sure it works. And now, of course, there's 2 more initiatives in there. That includes light rail transportation, bringing a bus system here so that in 1st District from Stafford down to James City, we have transportation so people can actually get around and get jobs so we can continue to build the economy. And last but not least, the Green Energy Initiative, where we can bring wind, solar, hydroelectric power to the 1st District, and we build it right here. Again, goes back to manufacturing, goes back to transportation, and goes back to agriculture and aquaculture. One of the parts of the Invest in America initiative is also the Invest initiative, which for nurses and home healthcare workers, educators, first responders, and veterans. Exempting the first 50,000 of their income. So by basically cutting the tax breaks that corporations get, that's a $5,000 a year for teachers. But I'm also talking about a minimum wage for educators. I'm also talking about a minimum wage for the nation that is a livable wage so you can live where you work. And that's really important. As far as healthcare, Healthcare is what my premise. I started this race on healthcare. My daughter has a rare condition called aspergillosis. It's why I can't go out to the different protests, because if she gets COVID-19, it will kill her. So for me, the most important aspect of my race is making sure we have affordable, accessible, quality health care. I believe in Medicare for all. Do I think it can happen? Not until we get rid of the current Senate, and we will vote that Senate out this year so we can pass Medicare for all. But until then, let's make sure Medicaid, that we have health care taken out of employers' hands and leave it up to the individual American to take care of their own health care at affordable rates. And by the way, we all need to understand the difference between health care and health care insurance. The balance is not there. Getting money out of health care insurance and making it not profit on our health will make a healthier America. And last but not least, I'm running because our country needs to have better leadership. My congressman hadn't done anything in 13 years, and all of a sudden last year, he decided to get busy and introduce 33 pieces of legislation. Too late, Rob. Time to go fishing. Time for you to retire. I'll buy the cake.
Well, another person that needs to retire will be Mitch McConnell after we replace the Senate and, get him out of being a majority leader. Yeah. I want to go next here and mention that the Beach Brothers is a testament to where the three of us are, and that's Virginia Beach, VB1. While we have such a great interest in what makes Virginia so special, so I would like you all to take some time to give us a great scope of the 4th District, the 11th District, and the 1st District. What compelling data stands out to you regarding those places?
Okay, well, the 1st District. The 1st District is a very diverse community. We span from Prince William County all the way down to James City to Hanover, back over to Matthews. Our coastline is one of the largest in the country. Our coastline goes, I think, 750 miles of coastline, if I'm not mistaken. The fact of the matter is that our aquacultural community, that's the community that catch the oysters, the fisheries, the crabbers. We feed America. That is something that's fascinating that most people did not know. Most people did not know that we have over 115 wineries and vineyards in our agricultural field. And most people did not know that we have one of the greatest hospitality markets right here, but it's untapped because our current congressman has not tapped it for us. Our community is 2/3 rural, and broadband is like one of the hugest issues. And I'm also running on that platform as well. Broadband needs to be brought here so we can educate our community, make our small businesses better, grow our small businesses, because we deserve it. We deserve better.
Just like Vangie's district, my district is also very diverse. We're about over 50% people of color. We're over 30% first generation immigrants. Hundreds of thousands of people speak a language other than English. The top languages other than English are Spanish, Korean, Vietnamese, Arabic, Mandarin, Cantonese, Urdu, and Farsi and Dari. So the New York Times just did a study of why Virginia turned blue in the latest election cycle, and one of the main reasons that they highlighted was that we turned blue because of the increasing diversity that is taking place in Northern Virginia suburbs. When our communities have more voices, when we can, that allows us to have a more impact on our political scene. The story of my family, it connects to many of these experiences, many of these backgrounds. I'm a first generation immigrant. I'm the first in my family to graduate from college. I speak Urdu and Dari at home. I'm struggling to make ends meet, make a living for me and my family. Our stories and our perspectives are incredibly important, and we deserve to have representation.
Well, the 4th District, I refer to it as the gem of Virginia because we are home to the capital, but we range from 4th District, run from the Richmond down to Chesapeake area and all points in between. We are rural, suburban, and urban. And so we have a very diverse community, just like the rest of Virginia. But we have some unique challenges here. One is our rural areas have a difficulty, obviously, with broadband and wireless technology. And so it's imperative that we that they have access to such technologies. But more importantly, they're having trouble with, they're referred to as food deserts, but it's very difficult. You have to commute pretty far just to get to a grocery store. And so there's a real opportunity out there for us to make sure that those communities have easier access to food and jobs. That's the other thing. So transportation is a very difficult or a challenge for many of them in our area because we don't have enough or sufficient public transportation to get people to and from more populous area where there are jobs. But Virginia is one of the most attractive places for businesses, so that's great. However, it's one of the worst in the country when it comes to workers' rights. And so right here in my district, I'm fighting for making sure that our employees or workers can, one, make a living wage, but secondly, that they are treated in such a way that they're an asset to their organization. And quite often they're disposable. There are a lot of part-time jobs here. There are a lot of opportunities for us as elected officials to work with businesses, to partner with businesses, to make sure that they're good corporate citizens, but that they are respecting the workers' rights in our state. And then finally, we have a huge small business community, particularly minority community, that do not have access to credit, loans, grants, and other subsidies that the federal government provides. My biggest concern is going through the COVID-19 and the CARES Act, that the definition of a small business is probably not the definition that most people think of when they think of small businesses. And mom and pop shops had to compete with the likes of Harvard University, Shake Shack, Ruth Chris, and many other companies that are highly profitable. And so when we talk about subsidizing small businesses, I think most people are thinking mom and pop shops. So one of the things I really want to focus on, and I want my sisters to also focus on, is redefining the definition of a small business so that small businesses do not have to compete with the likes of these very profitable organizations. And so those are some of the initial things that are happening across the 4th district that I really want to focus on.
And what's interesting about districts is what most people don't realize. If you're in a minority community, regardless of which district you're in the same type of minority community issue. For one thing, workers' rights. Right now, so the CARES Act, I can tell you of a hotel chain, okay, that actually let go of half their staff and kept their management staff on full time while their workers were laid off. But their workers got unemployment, and then when it was time to come back, the unemployment was more than they were making in their wages. So now we've created this little circle, this little vacuum where it's all going down the toilet. But the thing that I think that we can do going to Capitol Hill is sponsor legislation that actually protects the small business, and that definition needs to not include franchises, especially franchises that have more than 3 locations. Subway. Most Subway owners own 3 franchises. That's a small business. But a franchisee who owns 15 is not a small business. At this point, you've crossed over. If you own a hotel chain, Marriott has various levels, okay? Hilton has various levels. All the chains now have franchisees who own different hotels. Each one of those hotels was counted as a small business instead of the conglomerate counted as one business. And that was not fair to so many. And when we talk about the CARES Act, and Conrad, I don't know if I didn't get to go on this tangent. I just wrote a long post on our watermen. In the 1st district, our watermen depended on the CARES Act to save their businesses. My congressman went before Congress back in, I think it was February or March, and did this long, eloquent speech about how he was going to be there to protect the watermen. Most of the watermen I've spoken with did not get the CARES Act, which meant they got no money because they didn't qualify for unemployment because they're self-employed. It was a circle that is now hurting us. These farmers, these watermen, they actually supply the fish, the oysters, the crabs to restaurants in this area. So the trickle down experience meant we had less crabs, we had less oysters, we had less fish. And now these fishermen are trying to catch up, and they can't do it because now they don't have the staff, because the staff is home, and most of them don't live in the 1st District. We have created a monster. And right now, COVID-19 not only did it expose our economic weakness, it also exposed our national security issues. It exposed our weaknesses within our employment force. And when we go to Capitol Hill, I'm telling you, I said it on my last interview, women are going to continue to go up to Capitol Hill and clean house because we are tired of the mess that's being left behind for us. I can tell you, strong women. Rosie.
Jump on in there, Mr. Jose.
All right, will do. All right, ladies, we're going to say tomorrow comes, tomorrow goes, and all 3 of you are winners. What comes next? Will you think about how you all could use joint voices from here to November?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. I think that we just need more representation of women, as Vangie said before, in Congress. I think that our perspective, particularly as women of color, are so marginalized in the political sphere. We can bring voices to center issues that affect a lot of women, such as guaranteed maternal leave, universal pre-K, assuring access to reproductive health, instituting a fair work week, expanding resources for survivors of domestic violence and sexual violence, reducing disparities in the maternal mortality rate amongst Black women, and fighting for fair wages. I think beyond the women's issues, I know that women make good representatives for everyone. I know that I'm running on a progressive platform to make broad structural changes, such as Medicare for all, the Green New Deal bills, defunding the police, abolishing ICE, and these help so many communities that go so far beyond just our identity as women.
Yes.
So absolutely, I think I'm incredibly excited to be working with these beautiful, amazing ladies.
Yes. Back in 2018, I ran with Elaine Loria, Abigail Spanberger, Jennifer Wexton, Jennifer out of the 9th. I mean, we had a strong coalition. And if you saw the picture of all of us, the hope was that all 5 of us went. And what I can tell you as a Black woman, I was disappointed because I felt that the establishment did not support women of color. And it still stands today. I don't see it. It's like I got to prove myself to be even higher and stronger than a man, regardless of color. And the interesting part about it is I ran the best race in Virginia's history, and you would have thought that the establishment would have jumped aboard and said she can beat Rob Whitman, but instead I have to reprove myself over and over again, even throughout the last campaign. So the thing is, we need to get people to understand that a strong woman is only as good as the support she gets, but a strong woman gets stronger because once we figure out that support isn't there, we become beasts. And I hate to tell them, I didn't lose the last election. I learned. I know how to beat Rob Whitman. I know the secret now. Before I didn't. Now I do. Thank you for the lesson. We appreciate it because I'm going to share that lesson with my sisters. And I'm going to make sure when we go to Capitol Hill that we continue that fight. Hey, Higher Heights endorsed me, but it shouldn't just take Higher Heights. It should take other women's organizations to have stepped up. If you're the only woman in your race, it should have been an automatic. You should not have to continue to beg for their support. I'm a woman. I support women. I support children, and I support men. Oh, wait. I support everyone in America.
Well, I'm excited about tomorrow and to the vision the 3 of us have. And I think what we'll bring to Congress is a difference that is definitely needed. And right here in my district, for 231 years, we've only sent males to Congress. And imagine, if you would, if we've had women, more softer, different voices on the Hill, how different things would be. Right now, it's a good old boys network. I think Vangie was alluding to that. It's a good old boy network, and how you get there is a good old boys game. So the first thing I like to say is we campaign differently. We campaign on issues, and we campaign and expect people to believe that our belief and passion is enough, right? And sometimes it's not enough because we don't play, because and I'll just say game for lack of a better term, the game that they've played, right? And so they've been honing that skill for so many years. And I think this civil unrest that we're going through changes a lot of things, because I'm not willing to fit in that box anymore. I'm not willing to back up and say, I'm going to play the boys game. I'm going to, behave a certain way so that I can fit in. No, you're going to accept the authentic me, which is I'm a woman of color, I'm a mom, and I am fed up with the politics of today and the games that are being played with corporate America, lobbyists, and our politicians. This is about what is good for the family, what is good for America, what is good for this country, and more importantly to me, what is good for the citizen and the communities in the 4th Congressional District. I don't have time for games. None of us do. And the fear I think that's happening, if the 3 of us and women like us make it to Congress, oh, what a country we would live in. What a day that would be. And so I think I agree with Vangie. I shouldn't have to prove myself over and over again that I'm worthy of a woman's voice. We're the largest and the most reliable voting bloc, but yet we don't send each other to Congress. We don't send each other to the Senate. We still have, and I think that happened to Elizabeth Warren as well, and a lot of the other women who ran for the president, is that people still see, and no slight to anyone, because I don't mean it that way, that white male kind of persona when they think of leaders. And they have to look at it a little differently. And you know what? I'm not going to try to recast myself so that I can fit a mold to get there. This is who I am. I'm not going to change when I get there, and I will be back. And that's another thing that's lacking. We get people in Congress, they don't come back until it's time for a vote. And that needs to stop.
Absolutely.
Interesting.
Very interesting.
Yeah. All right, so we're really heartened to see great women candidates running for federal office. So definitely salute to y'all. Someone would be quick to note how reliable women are as a voting bloc, and it's interesting that Cazel just mentioned that. And you also mentioned that women are not sending women into those seats.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. I like that empowerment angle. I'm the empowerment guy. So do you 3 see yourselves as sort of like role models and examples for future women in Virginia and the world who want to run for big office?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that I know for myself that when I go, and I'm sure this is true to Cazel and Vangie's experience too, that I see so many young women who've come up to me and told me that they're inspired to see a woman run for office. As an Afghan woman, as a refugee, as a working class person, as a Muslim woman, I know that we don't get a lot of representation, and people don't often listen to our stories. I know that during the 2018 midterms, I canvassed for Vangie because I was inspired to see a woman of color running for Congress in the district where most of my family lives. And I think that, and Vangie has talked about this before too, that Virginia was one of the states and has never had a woman of color representative in Congress. And that's something to note. And I think that hopefully this inspiration ripples down and broadens the way that young women and young women of color see their opportunities in life. And I know that from the circumstances in which I grew up, I thought that the most powerful or the most effective office or position a woman could hold would be a teacher, because I had seen other family members become teachers. So the strong message that it says, the impact that it has on young women and young women of color psyches is huge, to see their role models, their leaders be all white men. So I hope that people do learn from our experiences and see us as people who are breaking barriers and being resilient through all the roadblocks that are being put in front of us because we're women of color.
You know, go ahead, Cazel.
Sorry. So for me, yes, I think it's nice for younger girls to see us run, and particularly girls of color who are looking for more contemporary leaders to emulate. But I also think it's important for young men, young boys, to see women in powerful positions. So as they move up and become decision makers in their organization, it is not an afterthought to include a woman or a quota to include a woman, but it would be easy. It's expected. This is what I expect to see. A rainbow coalition of people around the table offering voices and different perspectives. So when we talk about inclusion, it needs to be inclusion of not just inclusion of color, not just inclusion of sex, but inclusion of thought. And so I feel like I hope I serve as a model for both young men and young women who are looking to enter into and grow up and, you know, the from the smallest up, that this is just the norm and not an anomaly that what they're seeing.
Absolutely.
Interesting. I like the way that you said diversity in thought. I think that's very important. I have to admit, growing up, I wasn't too shocked to see women in places of power. That was kind of what it may have been that my parents strategically put me in situations where I saw that. And so that's not surprising to me. What is very surprising to me is that I'm starting to see a lot more diversity in thought. And so I'm glad to hear that. All right. Good stuff. Good stuff. We got 3 role models on the show. Good stuff.
So this is important to realize. When I ran back in 2018, I was the only woman of color running, doing it for the federal seat. And I had never actually thought about what I was doing and how I was doing it, because my focus was on the fact that I had seen women pushed down. As a woman of color, I was always the only woman and woman of color in my meetings. And then when I went and I tried to help someone, it seemed like the only ones that were being pushed in my direction were young women of color. And I kind of felt kind of odd about that. One of the things that I think I realized last campaign, and if you came along the campaign, if you see the videos and you see the crowds, there were little girls who were wearing pearl earrings and pearl necklaces and their little red sweaters. And it was kind of crazy, but I realized I had to become a role model unintentionally. And my thing was, you can be and do anything you want to be or do. My motto in life is life forward every day. Learn from your past, but move forward in your future by learning what they did wrong, doing it right, so that we all have a future. And I've lived by that all my life. My grandfather was a cool guy. He said some things that were kind of off at times, but I listened to some of them and I was like, oh, that's what he meant. You know, it's like I was telling my daughter today, I take her to the doctor, and this young man, it's just like all 2 years ago, even last year during the state races, everybody I talked to, I asked them, do you know who your congressman is? No. Do you know who your state senator is? No. Do you know who your state delegate is? No. If they don't know that, I know they don't know who the board of directors are. It wasn't until 2018 that most of the people in the first district even knew who Rob Whitman was, because he had not been there. But they know me, a Black woman. And we had, and I'll tell you, scary enough, we had a really high Republican flip rate in 2018. What do you think is going to happen now? And don't be surprised. I know you ladies agree. How many women?
I know what that's like to be.
How many women are actually Republicans who support Trump but would support us as a congresswoman? I hate to say it. I saw it in 2018, and I'm seeing it again. We have to find out what's going on in that thought process, because I am nothing like Trump. They aren't either. So
you know what? Well, I think you're on to something, Conrad. I know you were going to come up next with the next question. Can I tap in for 30 seconds, say something? I think you're on to something. A friend of mine who went to the Trump rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma, shared with me that while he was at the Trump rally, he talked to some of the other MAGA hats there, and he was talking to them about reparations, and he was astonished that more of them than less of them were in favor of some of the things that he was talking about. So I think that there's a great amount of people, regardless if you're blue, red, or purple like me, who are looking for something that makes sense, that's going to make dollars, that's going to make progress. Sense, dollars, and progress. And I think if you do a really great job of exemplifying and sharing your message, I think that the people who want to have somebody who makes sense, makes dollars, and makes progress are going to cross the lines and vote for a person like you.
Yeah, it's called breaking the glass ceiling, breaking the glass ceiling, period, for it, regardless of race. But when you break that ceiling, if you don't give somebody else a hand up while you're coming up, you just put a new glass ceiling there. And that's something that we, as women, had to learn in the last few years. We had to learn that once we got to that level, that there were still people being pushed under that ceiling, although we made it. And that is because we have legislators in office, we're used to, because a lot of women took those roles, and they are starting to recognize that women deserves equal work for equal pay for equal work. Not only that, we deserve the right to rest. Do you know that most women, like right now, I'm the mother of 6 daughters. I work full time. I actually campaign full time, and I'm helping others in the community. I just explained on the last call I had, I work 50 hours a week. I campaign 50 hours a week. I am on this campaign phone literally, I don't know, the 50 hours of campaigning, I'm on that phone texting, meeting people, Zooming people, because people want change. And that glass ceiling means you bring your neighbor up with you, or else you have just put the glass ceiling back, and the only thing you're doing is standing on it and waiting for it to collapse on you.
Wow. And before I go into my next question, I do want to take just a few seconds to shout out Southern Volkswagen over in Greenbrier and Chesapeake, 1248 South Military Highway. Go get yourself a nice Volkswagen. They sell used too. Excellent service over there. Go see Cynthia Rawlings, Charlie Roy. Get yourself a nice Volkswagen. I want to sort of mesh the glass ceiling into a question with some of the viewer questions here. There have been some really good questions. For instance, Jesse CT asked, you ladies have strong voices. Have ladies mentored or considered mentoring young women? Another asked, Lisa, we all need to work harder to shatter the glass ceiling. So we've touched on it a little bit, but also touch into mentoring. How do you like to go forth with that in the future?
Absolutely. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the Congressional Caucus of Black Women and Girls. You know, the first time I went, I was astonished at how many Black congresswomen we had on Capitol Hill, because you never hear about them. But what was more important, I met lawyers of color. I met children of color. I learned about the ACLU, and I told you guys about it. And, you know, how to protect myself as a woman of color by having ACLU blue. I learned so much, but I'm also an Emerge sister. So I went through Emerge, and we all have continued to mentor women across the country. So this time right now, because I'm running, I'm not mentoring, but I still mentor young women in our community. By the way, we have seats to flip in the 1st district, and these young ladies know, come to me. If you're ready to run for office, let's flip some seats so we can make a difference in our community. So we can represent us as women of color, period. The fact that domestic abuse is one of the biggest murder rates in our country is because women aren't the ones making the laws. Why are you protecting our abusers? Protect us. Protect our daughters. You know, for the ladies, we have a job when we get to Capitol Hill of passing legislation, and one of the ones that we should do it is make mentoring worthwhile. Make it so that when we bring a young lady along with us, that we have the money to pay for mentoring and getting her the tools so she can succeed. It takes a whole lot. Mentoring is a big part of running for office and being who we are as women in our careers. So I agree. I definitely mentoring.
So I'm a lifetime member of Girl Scout, and I put that as one of the top 3 credentials that I listed. And the reason that I did that is twofold. One, I love children and I'm an advocate of children, and I think they need to be front and center for anything that we do, particularly when you're running for public office. And so everyone was like, oh, you're underselling yourself. And I was like, you know what? Either I've said this before, either they take me the way I am or they don't, But for me, children are a very important part of my campaign. And I've spent my life serving children in various ways, but I am a lifetime Girl Scout member and have had troops for many years. I don't have a troop now, but I have. But I have spent 30 years in federal services, and about half of those years was as an executive. And so you talk about 50 hours a week on the campaign and 50 hours. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. So there wasn't much left for me to give after work because I spent so much time mentoring and growing young professionals and bringing in people. It bothers me. Let me just pause for a second and say this. Vangie mentioned that I too was the only one at the table. Sometimes I was the only female at the table. Oftentimes I was the only person of color at the table. Oftentimes I was the only one of both. And so that was a very, when you come in and you're the first, it's like chopping down trees. You're in the forest and you have to clear a path. You're the one that's going to get bruised and hurt and, bloody. And the people that come behind you, they get to walk a smoother path. So I was willing, and I'm so used to being in that position to go ahead and clear a path for other people. And so professionally, I've done that repeatedly. As a congresswoman, and particularly the 3 of us will not only make history because 3 of us won at one time, but more importantly, 3 women of color at one time has broken a ceiling, has shattered a ceiling. Yeah. But the interesting part about it, I think, is that we bring to the table something different. And I think women in general bring things to the table differently. And I think that is not just scary to people we're running against, but I think it's scary to the establishment, to both parties. Because I don't think women were very much, I hear what Vangie's saying, but I think when you're in those positions, I think we're just worrying about solving problems. We're not really worried, are you wearing blue today, or are you wearing blue today, or red or blue? That kind of sounds like street game colors to me versus what we really should be doing in public office. Because I think once we're there, it's like, okay, we have a domestic violence issue. We're going to solve this together. And so I think we, when I say we, not just the 3 of us, but just women in general, particularly women of color, we will change the landscape and the discussion and the way people work together on the Hill. Because they're not used to, we're used to making things happen with very little. We've come through a struggle. Even if we were born of privilege, when I say privilege, I mean, we're not poor. We may be a working class or a middle class, but we still struggle. As you can see in the news today, we're still struggling, and we seem to always thrive. Can you imagine having that type of power in the America's political arena? That'll just change the whole landscape. And you're seeing the women that are there doing just that. Adding to the mix, we'll be unstoppable. But again, I think this country would be so further ahead.
Yeah.
I echo everything that both of you said. So I think that part of the barrier that we as women face and we as women of color face is because there are not a lot of people who are in these positions that we can look up to, and then there are not a lot of mentoring problems, or they require some sort of fee for you to be able to go. And I think that excludes so many people who need representation and need to be at the decision-making tables in our political sphere. So I think that absolutely, I've mentored people, like programs like Big Brother, Big Sister work so effectively because mentoring is so effective for people. So 100%, I completely agree that we need to work together to create these programs so we can include a diversity of thought, a diversity of perspective, a diversity of experience. And so often, and this is my experience, and I'm sure the two of you can relate to it too, that I walk into a room of people who are in a decision-making position, or in a high-ranking member of a committee, or they're some leader of a political organization or some kind of board of directors. I'm almost always the only woman. And as a young woman of color, it is incredibly difficult for people to take me seriously. My campaign touches on a lot of political issues that affect millions of lives. But I can't count how many times men have commented on my post critiquing what I wear and how I carry myself. I can't count how many creepy messages I get from men on social media, or people just randomly emailing me, specifically men at a higher rate, white men, throughout my campaign to just let me know of things, of their thoughts and feelings, and mansplain things to me about my own policies. And these are not new issues to us. We have gone through this all of our lives. And I think the other aspect of it is that women aren't, like Vangie said, aren't always better either. So, and I think it so often happens that a lot of women and a lot of women of color climb the ladder and then kick the ladder behind them. So I think that, like Vangie said, if you're not bringing people up with you, what's the whole point? And like I have examples of this in my campaign where organizations of women's rights organizations and who have not even given me the opportunity to make my case and have automatically endorsed the incumbent because they have relationships, previous relationships with the incumbent. So I think that there are organizations or resources that exist for women, but don't really actually do anything to benefit women. And I think that our gender and our race place this huge obstacle. And obviously, like Cazel and Vangie said, I think that makes us stronger, that makes us more resilient. That's why we would make great leaders.
Yep, living by example, living by experience.
Very interesting, ladies, very interesting. Before we go any further, I want to go ahead and send out my second shout out. Will be to the Schooner Inn. On the flip side, to my brother's hotel, Conrad's hotel on the ocean front. The Schooner Inn is also a wonderful hotel. You guys can go. Great getaway. They have all oceanfront rooms. Great clean rooms. Wonderful service. Excellent service. So stop in. It's at 215 Atlantic Avenue in Virginia Beach on the ocean front. Stop in and see Gladys and tell her Jose and the Beach Brothers sent you. And now for my second question, ladies. The VP pick for Joe Biden is likely going to be a woman of color too, namely someone like Senator Kamala Harris or Representative Val Demings. It's noteworthy they both hail from a law enforcement background. Another representative and one of Conrad's favorites, Massachusetts' Ayanna Pressley, recently said that when it comes to racial justice, that is not about any one person in our president or two people in our vice president and president. Again, racism is structural. The oppression has been systemic and is going to require everyone. Mm-hmm. How important is having a seat at the federal table by you three in that goal?
Well, I can tell you, I grew up and we talked about this on my last time I was on, and it was a great show. And I've been witness to cross burnings. I've been witness to being called multiple names. I've been witness to being afraid for my life, even in the past year, going to a Tea Party meeting. I won't do it again. But the systemic racism that we face is the ones that you don't think about. So, for instance, we know about the pay gap. we know about the fact that a Black person is going to probably get a tighter sentence than a white person. But this is the part that people don't think about. That racism starts when you walk into a store. The fact that Black hair care products cost more than white hair care products. The fact that you can walk, that majority, and this is a crack joke that everybody keeps talking about, is the fact that hair care places, beauty supply stores, rarely owned by Black people. But this is some of the things, because we can't get the small business loans, systemic racism. How about the locations where the spots are? Well, if you can't get the business loan and you don't have the money yourselves, because we aren't born with a silver spoon in our hand, in our mouths most times, we don't get those opportunities. One of the things by having a seat at the table that we get is that we get to write the laws that include everyone, that makes the scales even, that makes it so that women of color, women, no matter what race, has an opportunity to start those small businesses. But most important, we get to wean out the systemic racism that has been holding back this country for 400 years. The fact that in 2020, we are readdressing the civil rights issues that we were addressing back in the 60s is sad. The fact that we have police departments that have never changed their racist policies because they never had to. There's been no one to challenge them. So going to Capitol Hill, having a seat at that table at the federal level for Congress, and then at the senatorial level, I love Kamala Harris. I think she'll be a great vice president, but can we afford to lose her in the Senate? It's something that I've argued with myself, and I love her. And I was like, wait, wow, I can't afford to lose Ayanna Pressley or Kamala Harris to go to VP. I want to make sure we get these laws passed. But at the same time, we need that higher representation, because most VPs, we never hear about what they do for us. We never hear those words. Systemic racism starts right there on Capitol Hill. Having as many Black and I call them the Rainbow Coalition of Capitol Hill up there, we're getting laws introduced and held up with the Senate that affect people that look like me, that look like her, that look like Jose, that look like her, that look like you. We need across the board cleaning. I keep saying, you got to send more women that represent the Rainbow Coalition up to Capitol Hill so we can clean house and fix this country so that all Americans are represented, not just the ones who look like our forefathers. And no offense, Conrad, he knows I'm not talking to him. But we just need that faction. And I got to tell you something, systemic racism is happening right now in all of our campaigns. As a woman of color, back in 2018, I ran a congressional campaign with less than $500,000. It was unheard of. It was unheard of. And we were told that we were going to lose by 25 points. We lost by less than 10 points. And we did it with no money because no one wanted to help a Black woman campaign. And that woke me up. And I said, you know what? I'm going to keep fighting to break this glass ceiling, because no woman of any color should have to fight this hard to represent her district. And not only that, once we did come close, you would have thought that the same people who said you couldn't do it when you almost did it, that glass ceiling was a new glass ceiling, because now it's like, okay, well, you did this and you did it with this. Can you do it with this? We have COVID-19. I'm not going to beg my constituents or my future constituents for money. They're hurting. So help me, federal government. Help us as federal candidates run a campaign that's fair and just. And it comes from systemic racism. White people typically have more money.
So, there's plenty of discrimination to be shared. It's race, it's sexism. But one of the things I think is one of the impediments to getting the best qualified person in public office is, the good old boy network, the old process. They make it very difficult this is my first run, right? I'm just a mom and a retired federal employee with a boatload of experience, right? But the party one supports an incumbent. They won't say that, but to be honest, if you're the incumbent, it is to your advantage really to ignore your opponent and not have a fair race because they threaten you, right? And so people tend to vote what they know. And so if you can keep your opponent as unseen as possible, then you improve your process, and those who are in power with you will go along with that process because you'll return the favor as well. To me, that something's wrong with our political system at the root, and it's racism may be part of it, but I think it's a larger part of it is this culture of entitlement. Like once I get there, I'm staying, and I will stay at all costs, even if it is to the detriment of the people that I serve. And so I'm more concerned about how do we get good qualified people in there, regardless of the race, regardless of the sex, but how do we introduce more people into the process so that we can have what I talked about earlier and has been mentioned several times before, is that inclusion or that diversity of thought. It's just once people get in there, they work on staying there, not necessarily work on an issue. How many photo ops happened after the George Foreman thing? How many people just came out for the protest, but haven't introduced any legislation, hasn't really done anything at the state level to talk about defunding the police or changing our history books to reflect the true history. One of the things I feel at this point in our history is we need, and I hope I'm not changing the conversation, but we really need to look at declaring a state of emergency on racial injustice so that we can really deal with the systemic problem of racism all at one time. That's whether it's credit for small businesses, whether it's police brutality, whether it's access to jobs, access to the political arena, looking at our history books to ascertain whether or not it truly reflects the history and the contribution that people of color has made to this country. For me, it is systemic, but it's part of a larger culture of I'm going to keep, and there is no room to let anybody else into the process.
Amen. Amen.
I think that I completely agree with Ayanna Presley that racism is structural and it takes more than one person, right? It requires everybody's participation for us to make big structural changes. So for me, as someone who is advocating for structural changes like defunding the police, right? Like reinvesting in our social services, passing Medicare for all of these larger policies, we need more people with lived experiences as people of color, as working class people, to bring our perspectives to the table to be able to make change. And then as a progressive movement, I think that I have many excited volunteers from many parts of the country who know that we need every seat that we can to make a difference. And as a woman of color, I also know that I will probably be one of the only people with my experience and perspective in a lot of rooms. As Cazel said before, there's so often you walk into a room, you're either the only woman or the only person of color or both. So that's why I think it's so important to build upon what we're all fighting here and open up the opportunities for more women to have a voice, more women of color to have a voice, in order for us to create a more equitable, racially and economically equitable and just society.
Yes, amen to that. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Let's keep the power and the depth of these questions going. And my last question tonight is going to stem back from my libertarian days. And yes, I am a member of the Virginia Beach Democrats, but I would like to see significant chunks of the criminality of drugs reduced. I also believe doing so will have positive influence on overall violence levels in the United States. As it stands, the drug war more negatively impacts poor minority communities, from sentences to fines, and the legalization of things like marijuana even tends to force out minority businesses on those fronts, by licensing requirements, which only richer, whiter folks can acquire. The feds need to attack this, and how would all three of you want to attack that?
I actually have a marijuana justice platform on my website, and you're completely right that the war on drugs specifically attacked communities of color, particularly Black communities, and we need to immediately federally decriminalize marijuana, commute the sentences of those in jail or prison because of marijuana, just possession, expunge their records, and for those who have been charged with marijuana-related offenses. We need to implement implicit bias training to end all unequal enforcement of existing laws against communities of color. We need to invest via federal subsidies in the communities most impacted by the discriminatory drug laws that allowed for over-policing of communities of color, and particularly Black communities. We need to support communities of color, particularly Black and Latinx communities, in creation of businesses that engage in the marijuana economy, and change the licensing process to make it easier for small-scale businesses to profit from the marijuana industry that so greatly negatively impacted their communities. And I think that there have been TV shows, there have been documentaries about how legalization of marijuana has become this commodity that people who have money, corporations who have money, who typically tend to be white men, benefit from these, from the profits, now that it's become profitable, when Black and brown people were paying the price for it with our lives for so long. So I think that there needs to be all these changes implemented so we can guarantee that we're making amends with the racist drug laws.
You know, we can take it one step further. Take what she said and take this one step further. On your employment applications, on your school applications, those same people who were, the question, have you ever committed a misdemeanor or a felony? If you've served your time, you've served your time. It's like asking a woman, how many children have you had? Or, I mean, I had a question asked during my last campaign, are your children by the same father? These are questions that should never be asked in a job interview. And in my opinion, this is the longest job interview that you go through when you're running for office. But when you are coming out of jail and you've served your time and you want to do right, that question should never be on an application, and it should be federally swiped. Right now, it hurts our communities of color, because the first time most employers see that, the only job you're going to get is a dishwasher or picking up trash or something that isn't as below what a man or woman should have to do after they've served their crime. And in many cases, my opinion is this: we need to change minimums. Minimum sentences are cruel and subjective. The fact that if you're in a car with somebody who commits a crime and you had no idea or knowledge that that crime was going to happen should not mean that you should go to jail for that crime with a minimum sentence. We are ruining the lives of millions of young men and women. And it's sad because it's young men and women of color. Decriminalizing marijuana is a very great step. I understand Dillon rule. We can't control how states operate, but we can work in tandem and earmark money for education, for drug rehab, for housing, for programs that, like NACA, that actually put minorities and people period in homes. I mean, you can't even go to college if you check that you had a drug offense. So you can't get a federal loan. It affects the communities at a great level.
So I agree with everything that the two other ladies said. The only thing I would add to it is, once it's legalized, that we look at entrepreneurial opportunities for minorities and to create small businesses opportunity. Because my fear is that when it's legal, it's the time that it's taken to become legalized, corporate America is already laying the foundation so how they can profit off of it. And to me, this is a ripe opportunity for us to allow people to really, at the ground level, create entrepreneurial opportunities to live the American dream doing something that they want to do and sell something that they want to sell, and not have the government influence in an undue way that allow, again, large corporations to take ownership of this particular product. To me, I just think maybe, I don't know how far-fetched it is, but if the three of us get together and introduce the bill, it's not that far-fetched, that it may need to stay in a small business market, to a certain degree, for a certain period of time, whether it's 10, 15, 20 years before it can go to another level. I may not be explaining it quite the way, because I'm kind of thinking on my head, because I'm thinking, how could we take those young men who went to prison for being entrepreneurial, selling marijuana, and getting a severe sentence, whereas we could have nurtured their entrepreneurship and created a business now, once it's legalized, a business opportunity for them to really leverage talent that they had all along, but was misdirected because of the choices that they made at the time when the law was in such a certain way, unfavorable to them. There is so much talent that is going untapped because of this, back to this systemic racism. There is so, I think long and hard. I look at people while I'm going crisscross in my district, and I'm looking at people who talk about, I can't vote because I have a felony and I don't really know how to get it off. I don't, I have to do restitution, I have to pay, or I'm in parole, I'm this, I'm that. And it just seems so incredibly difficult for them to be an active part of society. And so, they go back to what they know, because that's all they have, because our society isn't allowing them to come back in and play an active role. And so once this is decriminalized, people's records are expunged, I really think this really is an opportunity to really allow entrepreneurship in a different way than we have in the past. I do not think the government should be even offering subsidies to corporate America to start this type of business.
Exactly.
Okay, great. Well, ladies, my third and final question. You all have a wide area to view Virginia business. You'll represent millions of Virginians in Congress. In reaching out to viewers who are in your districts, how would you all tell them that you know what the Virginia worker and Virginia business owner needs right now? How might you all work together to improve it?
I know that in my district, in District 11, there are hundreds of businesses owned by communities of color that are now suffering because they didn't benefit from the previous stimulus packages, because they were discriminatory towards small businesses owned by people of color. I also know that there are thousands of undocumented families who are in the brink of eviction and starvation because they haven't received any federal funding or any federal relief. And I know that because of cost of living is so high in Northern Virginia, that so many workers in general are running out of their savings and are worried about eviction, which is, I feel like, is an upcoming crisis that's coming up. I support the stimulus package that gives $2,000 to every adult in the U.S. with additional funding for their children. We also need a stimulus package that specifically supports businesses owned by people of color, who are being left behind by the general stimulus package that was proposed before, and so many people got left behind because there was no specific instruction to have them be a part of the beneficiary, just like every other business.
Well, it's interesting because one thing that most people don't talk about is the fact that most corporations, and when I say corporations, actually give money to incumbent congressmen in the form of a donation every election. And it's weird how those are the ones who actually benefited from this package. The facts that is clear. You can go and look up any incumbent. If they got money from a corporation that received part of the stimulus package, why are you giving money to corporations who make millions, if not billions of dollars a year, and then you're gonna harm your own citizens? We need to figure out how we're going to keep people in their homes. We need to figure out how we're going to help people pay their utilities. I know of so many families who got the $1,200 plus the $500 per child. That money didn't even cover 1 month's rent, 1 month of rent. I live in King George. My water bill was $500. I asked my neighbor, how are they handling that? If you can't afford your water bill and your electric bill, once this all ends, oh my God, Dominion Power is going to be either really in the red, or we're going to have people really in the red and really in the dark, because it is funny. I haven't taken any corporate PAC money for the simple reason. When you start taking corporate PAC money, you're beholden to make sure that those entities are paid first. And they were. Why are we treating the airlines as if they were broke? It's incredible. Even the Airline Stewardess Association actually came out against it. They came out against it. So the question is, what are we going to do going forward? Here we are. We're going through a second wave. I don't care what our president or our government says. Anytime you have 38,000 new cases, we're going to have more people not going out in public. And those who are going out in public are getting sick. So we need to fix this. I agree. We do need to have the $2,000 a month for a little bit until we can get a vaccination and help people, and a safe vaccination. Keyword, safe vaccination. Don't use us as guinea pigs, because the first guinea pigs they like to come to are the communities that are less fortunate. We need to have a stimulus package for our workers, our grocery store workers, hotel workers. These are our first-line workers. Next to our nursing staffs and our doctors, these are the people that keep America going. And for the stores who did give pay to their employees who work, kudos, give it back. Give it back. Start it back now so we can get people off the streets in their homes, so we can make America healthy again. You know, our president, I mean, I'm looking and I'm panicked. Making America healthy again should be our first priority. I don't care about this election. He's going to have to lose. There is no way that a president of the United States doesn't back a package that supports the people before a corporation. Last time I checked, it's about we the people, not we the corporation. It's not about red or blue. It's about red, white, blue. And it's about time we get rid of him so that we can protect me and you. Oh, that rhymes. I need to keep that one.
Bars. Bars. All right, you've been enjoying the Beach Brothers show. So we're all Virginia Beach residents, Jose, Conrad, and I, and we love Virginia, and we love Virginia business and politics. So tonight we've had on 3 congressional candidates, and they've gone around the circle with a lot of great information. You probably saw the hashtag Strong Women repeatedly, and I guess it was well deserved. Virginia is going to be very well run in the future. We'll see. All right, great. So we're going to move on individually for last words. So let's begin with Zainab. Last words, Zainab. What are some of the last things you'd like to share right now?
I would like to tell everybody to go out and vote tomorrow. The way you can make positive change in this community, in your communities, and in this country, is to cast your ballot. Polls are open 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. They are observing social distancing rules, so please go out and have your voice heard so you can have representation by the people. We are candidates, specifically speaking about myself, who is accountable to the people and not the corporations. And our goal is to recenter politics around working class people and the issues that we face, not the interest of of corporate donors.
Beautiful. Cazel,
Great.
last words.
Well, thank you guys again for having us on. It's great to see you guys again. And my last words is this: we are in a historic time. We cannot come out of this pandemic the same way we went in. It's time for new leadership here in Virginia. In the 1st, the 5th, no, what is Zena? The 11th and the 4th. Tomorrow is really a historical time for us to come out and vote and make a change in our town and our state that sends a message that will reverberate across this country that women are here to make a difference. Women are here to stay. Women of color have a voice, and that tomorrow is a brighter day because you have elected 3 of the strongest women on this planet. I'm excited about tomorrow. I look forward to the 3 of us coming back to the Beach Brothers, which will be one of my first stops. Just say thank you.
All right.
And yes,
Do
rock
that.
the road.
Do that.
Thank you. Vote Cazel.
All right, good stuff. Good stuff. And Sister Vangie Williams.
Yes.
Boy, you can go. I tell you, sis, you can go, sis. You can go. She was
tomorrow is
on Kamala Harris are interesting because I'm not a Kamala Harris fan. I think she's done some things that are interesting, and I'll leave it at that. But the passion and the fortitude and the insight you have as a strategic planner, woo, you really brought it tonight. Your last words.
You know, tomorrow is a historic day. You have an opportunity to vote for women, and you have an opportunity to make change in this state, in this country. So, you know, it's funny if you haven't, ladies, join and go online to Facebook and join the Women's Summit that's going on right now. It's going on from the 20th through the 30th. The Women's Summit is hitting on topics that are important to women all throughout Virginia and the country. One of the hashtags they have is Virginia is my district. Well, Virginia is my district. The United States is my district. I'm running for Congress because we deserve better. We deserve change. We deserve equality. We deserve justice. We deserve leadership. It's time that we go to Capitol Hill and we clean house. We said it back in 2018. We're saying it again. It's time that ladies go to Capitol Hill and clean house, because the mess that we are in right now is worse than it was after the elections in 2016. It is at the point where we have pandemic, protests, and poverty. The fact that we had a 3 Ps, we need to change it around. So it's now time that we make it amazing. We bring it back to home. So I'm asking everybody to go out and vote. Go out and push. Go to my website, VangieForCongress.com. Go to my Facebook page. Go to my Twitter page, Vangie 4 with the number 4 Congress on Twitter, or Vangie 4 Congress on Facebook. Push my emails. My last text message about why I'm running, push it. Because the reason why we don't get a chance to get that seat at the table is because somebody doesn't understand. You must feed us to make that happen. To feed us and help us get that seat at the table. Push the seat up. I'm asking everybody to go out and find your poll and make a difference in your community, because no one's going to vote for you, and it's not anybody else's responsibility. We have an opportunity. These 3 brothers give you the voice. They give you the hearing. Now make it happen. I'm Vangie Williams. I'm running for Congress because I want to be the Vangie for Congress that will become Vangie, the congressional congresswoman that made change in the 1st district, which is the 1st district of our country. Setting it straight. We are the 1st district of this country.
Wow. Vangie can go, boy. Vangie can go.
I didn't come back from that.
Woo! Wow. I really enjoyed that. Strong women on that was the hashtag of the night. Strong women. Wow. If you like what you heard tonight, hashtag strong women. Put that in the chat. Hashtag strong women. I think the important piece is that tomorrow is a chance for us to vote. Tomorrow is a chance for us to vote. And as I said earlier, I focus on strategic voting. All right. I'm not voting for a person. I'm not voting for a party. I'm voting for leverage. Everyone go out and vote. If you're a Democrat, vote for the person you think that can beat, who will not beat your Democrat opponent. If you're a Republican, vote for the person you think that might beat that Democrat opponent. If you're an independent, vote to make sure you have some good choices. I don't believe you should vote for the lesser of 2 evils. We need to make sure we put the right people on the ballot, and that's how you can do that tomorrow. So I don't vote for evil, so I'm going to make sure that evil doesn't make it to November. I'm going to make sure that evil doesn't make it to November. Hashtag empowerment. All right, brother Conrad, any words?
The last few words tonight, of course, remember Conrad for City Council. Also remember Conrad Schesventer, Virginia Beach, for Facebook page, and stop by raisethemoney.com/cschesventer. See more of us and watch as much of the Beach Brothers show as you can.
Do that. Brother Jose, que paso? What are the last words, bro?
My final words, just everybody, please, please, please. I can't stress this enough. Go out and vote. You can't, I mean, if you're just complaining and complaining, you can't make change if you don't vote. So if you're not going to vote, you have no word. Get out and vote. Let your voices be heard. Just that simple.
Okay, I agree with that to a point. There's been a lot of change in the last 10 weeks in the United States of America, and none of that change happened at the voting ballot, at the voting place.
True indeed.
So, all right, so I will say this. Voting is a great tool, and we need to use it strategically as much as we can. But if you're a person who cannot vote, because we have some people in our country who can't vote, if you're a person who can't vote, you can still be involved in this process. You can still learn about the candidates and share that information with those who can vote. You can drive people to the polls. You can donate to the candidate that will support you. You can call those seated politicians and say, look, you're up for re-election. I can't vote. What are you going to do for me? What have you done for me lately? Hey, this is all about leverage. To make change, you have to have leverage. So those who can't vote, find ways to get leverage. If you can vote, vote for leverage. We need to make change. We can't wait. We can't wait. You've been checking out the Beach Brothers show. Let me get off of my soapbox.
Fierce urgency of now.
Donate to Conrad. Hey, we'll check everybody out later. Tuesday, tomorrow. Go ahead and vote. Let's make it happen. Stay beachy.
Everyone be safe and have a good night.